Have you ever wondered what would happen if a busy restaurant stayed open 24/7, serving customers non-stop, day after day, without ever closing for cleaning? Eventually, the trash would pile up, the kitchen floors would become caked in grease, the equipment would break down, and the entire operation would grind to a halt. Your body is exactly like that restaurant. If you are constantly eating from early morning until late at night, your cells never get a single second to rest and repair themselves. Intermittent fasting isn't just about skipping meals. It is the moment we decide to close the restaurant to activate autophagy, a Nobel Prize-winning self-eating mechanism. This is when the microscopic janitors inside your cells emerge to sweep away old proteins, recycle damaged parts, and regenerate your body at the DNA level. Make sure to stay with me until the very end of this video, because I will reveal a fatal mistake people make when breaking their fast, something 90% of beginners get wrong, that can destroy hours of cellular cleaning in just 20 minutes. If you're ready to take back control of your biology and achieve peak mental clarity, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe right now. Your support not only helps this channel grow, but serves as a commitment to a healthier version of yourself. Let's dive in. After closing the restaurant and understanding that the body needs time to clean itself, the next question becomes, what exactly is the main thing that needs to be cleaned out? The answer is not the soft fat you can pinch in the mirror. It lies deeper: visceral fat. Visceral fat is fundamentally different from subcutaneous fat. It sits deep inside the abdominal cavity, wrapping itself around vital organs such as the liver, pancreas, and intestines. Biologically, this is not harmless, extra weight. It is a highly active tissue that constantly releases inflammatory signals, disrupts insulin regulation, interferes with hormones, and quietly pushes the body into a state of chronic metabolic stress. This is why some people are not visibly obese, yet still face a high risk of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and fatty liver. The problem is that visceral fat does not respond to conventional dieting. Cutting a few hundred calories, running longer on the treadmill, or eating cleaner rarely makes a meaningful impact on this fat. Not because you lack discipline, but because you are speaking the wrong biological language. Visceral fat does not respond to willpower. It responds only to hormonal signals. This is where intermittent fasting is often misunderstood. At its core, intermittent fasting is not about starving the body or forcing endurance. It is about creating a long enough window for hormones to change roles from storage to release, from defense to repair. When done correctly, fasting allows the body to access visceral fat in a way that constant eating simply cannot. However, not everyone who fasts experiences these benefits. And this is where many people get stuck. During the early hours of fasting, the body enters a transitional state, the metabolic gray zone. Glucose from the previous meal is running low, but fat has not yet been granted permission to be released. Insulin remains elevated enough to keep fat cells locked. As a result, people feel hungry, fatigued, irritable, mentally foggy, and begin to believe that fasting is damaging their body. In reality, this is not damage, it is transition. But without understanding this phase, most people stop precisely at the moment their body is preparing to switch fuel systems. They conclude that fasting doesn't work for them, when in fact, they never allowed their biology the conditions required to function properly. This explains why some people feel progressively stronger, leaner, and mentally clearer with fasting, while others feel drained and give up. The difference is not willpower, it is timing and hormonal access. To understand why this happens and how the body decides whether fat remains locked away or finally becomes available, we must look closely at insulin, the hormone that holds the key to the fat storage door. If there is one single hormone that determines whether you burn fat or not, it is not cortisol, not testosterone, and not growth hormone. It is insulin. Insulin is not a bad hormone. It is a survival hormone. Every time you eat, whether it's a full meal or just a splash of milk in your coffee, insulin is released to do one primary job: move energy into cells. But at the same time, insulin does something most people are never taught. It locks fat inside fat cells. As long as insulin remains elevated, fat is not allowed to leave the fat cell. Not because your body is lazy, but because biology does not permit it. In that state, you can exercise harder, eat less, or fast longer, yet visceral fat remains locked away, sealed behind a biological door. This is the core reason so many people fast without losing fat. They feel hungry, tired, and irritable, but insulin never drops low enough to unlock that door. The body enters a cruel middle state. No incoming fuel from food, but no access to stored fuel either. Imagine your body as a house with two energy storage areas. The first is the refrigerator glycogen, quick access energy from recent meals. The second is a deep freezer in the basement visceral fat holding tens of thousands of calories. As long as the fridge is stocked, the body has no reason to go downstairs. Insulin is the lock on the basement door. Every snack, late meal, or sugary drink reinforces that lock. This is why fasting fails when insulin never truly falls. Hunger is not fat burning. Fat burning only begins when insulin drops low enough for biology to grant permission. When insulin finally decreases, a profound shift occurs. Fat is unlocked. Fatty acids are released into circulation. The liver converts them into ketones, and the body enters true fat-burning mode. Every major misunderstanding about fasting, that it weakens the body, destroys muscle, or slows metabolism, stems from misunderstanding insulin's central role. Once you understand insulin, fasting stops being an act of endurance and becomes a precise biological strategy. Once you understand that insulin is the fat-locking door, the next question becomes very natural. How do you lower insulin enough without breaking the body? And this is exactly where intermittent fasting comes in, not as a trend, but as a biological tool. Intermittent fasting is not a diet. It does not ask you to eat less, suffer more, or eliminate entire food groups. Its core principle is simple: reorganizing eating time. You still eat sufficient nutrients, but within a defined window, giving your body a period of time without incoming energy. That period of not eating is precisely what the modern body is severely lacking. In today's lifestyle, most people never allow their metabolic system to rest. Breakfast, snacks, lunch, afternoon coffee, dinner, then something before bed. As a result, insulin stays elevated almost all day, and the fat-burning door remains closed. This is where the greatest benefit of intermittent fasting lies. When you pause energy intake, insulin finally has the chance to drop. And when insulin drops, biology allows three critical processes to unfold. First, stored fat becomes accessible. The body can finally tap into energy that was previously locked away. Second, metabolic flexibility improves the body. Relearns how to switch smoothly between burning glucose and burning fat instead of relying on constant feeding. Third, hormonal balance begins to stabilize because the body is no longer overstimulated by insulin all day long. However, intermittent fasting is not without drawbacks, and this is the part many people overlook. If fasting is done at the wrong biological timing, the body does not enter fat-burning mode, but instead shifts into stress mode. Cortisol rises, energy drops, mood becomes unstable. If fasting is prolonged before the body adapts, exhaustion, dizziness, and mental fog can occur. Most dangerously, when fasting is practiced without understanding the underlying biology, it turns from a healing tool into a physiological and psychological burden. So the real issue has never been whether one should fast or not. The issue lies in how the body responds during fasting. When done correctly, fasting invites cooperation. When done incorrectly, the body pushes back. And to truly understand that difference, We now need to move deeper into the critical metabolic turning point, the moment when the body genuinely exits the gray zone and begins burning fat through biology, not willpower. Once it becomes clear that fasting is not about suffering but about creating the right biological conditions, the next critical question emerges. When does the body truly switch into fat-burning mode? Typically, around 14 to 16 hours after the last meal, a key biological milestone begins to unfold. Liver glycogen, the body's short-term glucose reserve, gradually depletes. At the same time, insulin drops low enough to stop locking fat inside fat cells. This moment marks the metabolic switch, the transition from burning glucose to burning fat as the primary fuel source. At this stage, stored fat is no longer dormant. Triglycerides inside fat cells are broken down into free fatty acids and glycerol. These fatty acids travel through the bloodstream and enter the mitochondria, the cell's energy factories, where they are converted into ATP. In parallel, the liver transforms part of this fat into ketones, a clean and stable fuel for the brain. This explains a common experience many people report. Hunger drops sharply, mental clarity improves, and energy becomes steadier instead of crashing. The body stops demanding food because it has successfully accessed an alternative, reliable fuel source. So where does the fat actually go? Not metaphorically, but physically. When fat is burned, most of its carbon content leaves the body as carbon dioxide through the breath. The remaining components exit as water through urine and sweat. In literal terms, fat loss is largely the act of breathing fat out of the body. The key insight here is this: the metabolic switch does not respond to willpower. It responds to hormones. If insulin remains elevated due to mistimed eating, frequent snacking, or biological misalignment, this switch never occurs, no matter how hungry you feel. And this brings us naturally to the next layer of understanding: why the body does not break down muscle during proper fasting, and which hormones actively protect it once fat burning begins. After understanding how fat burning truly unfolds during fasting, an equally critical question arises: who should not practice intermittent fasting at all? Intermittent fasting is not suitable for everybody at every stage of life. While biologically powerful, in certain contexts it can do more harm than good. First, pregnant or breastfeeding women should not practice fasting. During these periods, the body requires continuous energy and nutrients to support fetal development or milk production. Extended fasting can disrupt hormones, compromise energy availability, and negatively affect both mother and child. Second, individuals with a history of eating disorders must approach fasting with extreme caution. For this group, fasting can easily reinforce restrictive behaviors, reactivate obsessive control patterns, and lead to physical and psychological exhaustion. In such cases, fasting becomes a mental burden rather than a biological tool. Third, people with type 1 diabetes, those using insulin or strong glucose-lowering medications, should never fast without medical supervision. Without food intake, blood sugar can drop dangerously fast, leading to dizziness, loss of consciousness, or severe complications. Additionally, individuals who are underweight, malnourished, have chronic kidney disease, advanced liver disease, or are experiencing prolonged high stress and severe sleep deprivation are not ideal candidates. In these states, the body first needs foundational recovery, not additional metabolic stress. A key warning sign to recognize: if fasting consistently causes persistent dizziness, abnormal heart palpitations, nausea, shaking, confusion, or extreme fatigue that does not resolve with rest, this is not adaptation. It is a signal to stop. Biology does not reward stubbornness. Fasting is a powerful tool, but only when applied to the right person, at the right time, with the right biological foundation. Choosing not to fast is not failure sometimes. It is the most intelligent and self-respecting decision for your health. After seeing the full biological picture from insulin and metabolic switching to the limits that must be respected, the most important question is no longer how long to fast, but how consciously and respectfully you fast. Intermittent fasting is not a test of willpower, nor a punishment for the body. When understood correctly, fasting is a deliberate pause, a window where the body stops receiving and begins repairing, cleaning, and rebalancing from within. Fat loss is simply the most visible outcome. What happens deeper is hormonal restoration, blood sugar stability, and the return of metabolic flexibility that the body naturally possesses. Precisely because fasting is powerful, it demands awareness. When it becomes a competition of endurance or a rigid trend followed without context, a healing tool turns into stress. Biology does not respond to slogans. It responds to signals, rhythm, and safety. The body only unlocks its deeper processes when it feels respected. Remember this: the goal is not to live in hunger, but to build flexibility to eat when nourishment is needed and to fast when renewal is appropriate. When timing, duration, and intention align, fasting becomes a sustainable lifestyle element, not a phase of suffering followed by relapse. If there is one takeaway from this video, let it be this: your body is not working against you. It has always been trying to protect you in the best way it knows how. When you understand its biological language, force becomes unnecessary. Cooperation becomes enough. If this video helped you see fasting more clearly with science, compassion, and balance, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Here, we explore how the body truly works, beyond trends and extremes, toward long-term health you can trust.